Today, we are diving into a really fascinating and, let's be honest, sometimes controversial topic: the deep connection between our physical bodies and our mental health. We're going to look at how, for more than 100 years, we've tried to heal the mind by using the body, from some pretty intense medical procedures to ancient cultural rituals. So let's get into it. No, really, just for a second. What pops into your head? Is it some black and white scene from an old horror movie? Maybe a patient struggling in a cold, sterile room? Yeah, for a whole lot of us, that's the picture that pop culture has burned into our brains. And you know what? That's completely understandable. The very idea of using a physical shock to treat the mind, it sounds scary. This fear is a really common starting point, and it's tangled up in a long and complicated history. So to really get where we are today, we've got to go back to the beginning. So our first stop is all about where these treatments came from. I mean, where did this idea even begin? What were doctors in the past actually trying to do with these therapies that sound so extreme to us now? Our guide for this part of the journey comes from a really important text by Dr. Silvano Arietti. See, back in the early 20th century, psychiatrists just didn't have many options for treating severe mental illnesses like schizophrenia. They were honestly desperately looking for anything that could help people who seemed completely locked away inside their own mind. The theory they came up with was pretty straightforward. The thinking was that a powerful, jolting physical experience, a shock to the whole system, could act like a reset button for the brain. It could, they hoped, break up the rigid patterns of a severe mental illness and give the person a chance to reconnect with the world. It was a pretty dramatic solution, but they were facing a desperate problem. Okay, so what did these therapies actually look like in practice? Let's break down the two big ones from that time. And, this is so important, see how one of them has completely transformed into a modern medical procedure. All right, so you had two main players on the field. On one side, you had insulin coma therapy. This was, wow, pretty intense. It involved using huge doses of insulin to put a patient into a coma by making their blood sugar plummet. Then on the other side, you had electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT, which used electricity to cause a seizure. Both were extreme for sure, but they worked in totally different ways. Well, the story for insulin coma therapy has a pretty definitive ending. It was just way too dangerous. The risks of serious injury or even death were incredibly high. And on top of that, it wasn't even proving to be more effective than other safer options that were coming along. It was a dead end, and the medical world, thankfully, moved on. And that brings us to ECT, which, unlike the insulin comas, is actually still used today. And this is the absolute key takeaway here. Modern ECT is nothing like what you see in the movies. Today, it is a highly controlled, safe medical procedure. The patient is completely asleep under general anesthesia, their muscles are relaxed so there's no thrashing, and they feel zero pain. It is a lifeline, mainly for people with severe treatment-resistant depression or other things haven't worked. So, learning about these really powerful medical tools, it naturally leads us to a much bigger question. A question that takes us out of the hospital and into our own daily lives. And here's the pivot. This is the big question. If a controlled seizure can literally change brain chemistry for the better, what about other stuff we do with our bodies? Could things like dancing, rhythm, even just breathing, could they also have a positive healing effect on our brains? This question just opens up a whole new world of thinking. So for this next section, we're going to explore exactly that. How cultures all over the globe have seemed to intuitively know about this connection for centuries, using the body as a partner and healing the mind and spirit. I mean, just take something as simple as dancing. The research is pretty clear that rhythmic movement has real, measurable upsides. It can improve the coordination between different parts of your brain, help with focus, and it's a great way to build social connections. Some studies even suggest it can help reduce certain symptoms when it's used alongside regular medical care. But, and this is a really, really big but, we have to be super clear. Dancing is wonderful for you, but it is not ECT. It does not cause a seizure. It doesn't reboot your brain in that same biological way. The good stuff from dancing comes from totally different pathways, like improving brain coordination and lowering stress. And you see this same idea with other practices too. You know, meditation can literally help us rewire how we handle stress and regulate our emotions. Rhythmic things like chanting or drumming can have this incredibly powerful calming effect on our whole nervous system and can sometimes even shift our awareness. They're beneficial, Absolutely, but they aren't medical treatments. And this is not some new discovery, by the way. This is ancient wisdom. For thousands of years, cultures all over the world have woven together music, repetitive movements, and rhythm into these amazing complex rituals designed for community healing. Now, our source material makes a point that is so important to understand. It addresses a common misconception. In some of these really intense cultural rituals, a person's body movements might look uncontrolled, maybe a bit like those old, scary images of convulsions. But here is the critical difference. On a neurological level, in the brain, it is not an epileptic seizure. The brain activity is completely different. And you see these traditions everywhere. For instance, in the San healing dance of the Kalahari, people enter trance-like states to release social tension. The Stembali ritual in North Africa uses incredibly intense music and movement. And of course, shamanic drumming uses those steady, driving rhythms to guide people into different states of consciousness for healing or insight. Okay, so we've got these two very different approaches, right? Modern medical science on one hand and ancient cultural practices on the other. Both are trying to use the body to affect the mind. So let's bring it all home and pull these two threads together for one final crystal clear takeaway. This chart really lays it all out. You've got ECT, its mechanism, a controlled seizure. Its role, a medical treatment for severe illness. Then you have things like rhythmic wellness, dancing, drumming, that sort of thing. Their mechanism, brain coordination and stress reduction. Their role, supportive wellness. And finally, you have cultural rituals, which often work through altered states of consciousness for community and spiritual healing. Different tools for different jobs. And that brings us to what is without a doubt the single most important conclusion of this whole explainer. Things like physical activity, mindfulness, and cultural practices can be amazing, powerful tools for supporting our mental health. But they are not a substitute for professional medical care when someone is dealing with a severe mental illness. Full stop. But when you step back and look at the big picture, you see this beautiful shared human story, don't you? From the modern psychiatrist's office all the way to a ceremonial dance circle, we have always known there is this deep, profound link between our physical bodies and our inner worlds. We've always been trying to use one to help heal the other. So we want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. Both science and culture give us these incredible tools. But maybe the real wisdom isn't about picking one over the other. Maybe it's about understanding what each path is for, what it can do, and, just as important, what it can't. Thanks for watching.